Hello lamb lovers. This is my first ever food video. Everything is homemade, including the video. We're shooting for production quality slightly above the Blair Witch Project. Hopefully make that. We're going to do these every 2 weeks. Each will be a lamb dish. Today we're making lamb tagine, which is a Moroccan lamb stew. And this is part of the run-up to the opening a year or so from now of something called the Lamb Stand. And it will be part of a wool venture called Wearwool New London, obviously in New London. Tagine. Tagine is the Moroccan word for stew, but it's also the Moroccan word for the vessel that the stew is cooked in. This is a tagine. If you don't have a tagine, not everyone does, you can cook a tagine in a Dutch oven. This is a Lodge cast iron Dutch oven. You don't want to cook something to browning heat in this tagine. It's just too beautiful, too fancy a dish to risk doing that. So I'll saute the onions in that and I'll cook the stew in it, but I'm going to brown the lamb in this Dutch oven. The lamb is from Beaverbrook Farm in Old Lyme, Connecticut. It's about 10 miles from my house in Old Saybrook. This is a lamb shoulder with the bone in. The advantage of having bone in lamb is you can use the bone to make a quick stock. And if you're doing that, you need a lot more lamb than if you bought it boneless. So you might say, how is all this meat, there's 6 pounds of lamb here, how is all this meat going to fit in that? Well, when you bone it and you cut the fat off, you're going to end up with about half of what you start. So what you want is 3 pounds of boned lamb. That lamb is going to be cooked in the oil from these artichokes. And look at these artichokes. These are from Italy by way of Fromage, which is a cheese and gourmet shop in Old Saybrook. And then I'm going to use that same oil to saute onions. These are sliced, about a 1/4 inch thick. Towards the end of softening the onions, put in some coarsely chopped garlic. While that's happening, the bones from the lamb are going to make a bone stock. This is a teaspoon of ground ginger, a teaspoon of ground coriander. I'm going to put that right in the bottom of the pan. And then the final piece is saffron. This is a pinch of saffron that's been diffused in a little bit of hot water. And this saffron is just divine. And then this is the last thing that goes in before the first hour and a half. It's one whole bunch of parsley and one whole bunch of cilantro tied together with a string so you can pull it back out before these last 4 things go in, which are the artichokes. I'll quarter them, make them more bite-sized, a can of cannellini beans, and then preserved lemons, and then olives. These are an Italian olive, pretty big. And then at the very end, you chop some cilantro, put it on top, and then season it with some fresh ground black pepper. There you go. Okay, so what I'm doing here is boning the lamb, and I'm separating the fat, the bone lamb meat, and the bones. I'm going to use the bones for stock. I'm going to use the lamb meat, the boned lamb meat for the stew. So you don't have to be too crazy about getting all the meat off the bone. You're actually using the meat that's left on the bone. It's getting into the stock, the flavor of it. The key thing about the lamb from Beaverbrook is it's grass-fed. And if you've ever had grass-fed meat versus grain-fed meat, once you've had it, there's basically no going back. It's so much better. And it's a really cool thing to be able to go over to Old Lyme, which is about 10 miles from here, and get this lamb right from the farm. So a lot of chopping, and then we'll go brown the lamb. Ready to cook some lamb? So we're going to brown the lamb in this Dutch oven. I'm going to use the oil from the artichokes. I've got this Dutch oven heating up. Now I'm going to put some oil in there. And so you can see what happens. Bones, fat, boned lamb. This is about 3 pounds, started with 6. Now, I should say, if you're not in the orbit of old Lyme to get grass-fed lamb from the farm, there are over 400 sheep farms in Connecticut, so there's one near you, trust me. And for those folks, those friends of mine from California, California is the number 1 or 2 wool producing state, tons of lamb and sheep farms, wool farms out there. You can find one near you. So I'm not going to brown all this at one time. Only, about half of it at once. And if you crowd the pan with too much meat when you're browning it, it's not going to brown. It's just going to steam. So I might have to do 3 batches actually. Yeah, probably will. And I'm going to do it 4 minutes aside. And I'm just going to leave that there, not fuss with it, not turn it. I want it to get a nice deep brown on the side, and then I'll turn it over and get a brown on the other side. So this is the first batch after browning. You can see it's got a nice brown on it. I'm going to put this lamb into the tagine instead of putting it on a plate, so that some of the oil and fat from the lamb goes into the tagine, and then I'll cook the onion and garlic and spices in that fat. As soon as I get the lamb out, I'm going to put the lamb bones in the same pot, and they're going to brown. Then I'll pour off some of the oil and put in some water and make a quick stock. So now the bones go in. And I take the lamb out of the tagine. I'm going to slice an onion. Just cut the top and bottom off the onion. Slice it in half vertically. Peel off, the outer skin. And then I'm going to cut it crosswise in relatively thick slices, because when you're braising, if you cut the onion too thin, it's going to burn with that 1.5 to 2 hour braise. So like that. Saute these onions until they're soft. And that's probably about 8 minutes. And then I'll add garlic to it, which I'm just going to peel and cut into slices. It's going to just pretty much disintegrate over the course of cooking, so you don't have to mince it. The problem with this time of year with garlic is it's hard to find garlic that's not sprouted, and that's a little bitter, so you want to take that sprouted piece out. So I'm going to pour off some of this fat, or most of this fat, and then I'm going to cover the lamb with water and really cook it high with the water and let the water reduce. I'm going to turn the heat back up so that really gets the flavor out of the bones and also concentrates, reduces. And that becomes a very simple stock. You can see how this is boiling now. It's going to reduce down, be a concentrated lamb flavored stock. So I'm now going to add the garlic. That just goes in the last minute of the onion softening. I'm going to add the spices. This is ginger and coriander, a teaspoon of each. And it's good to kind of cook them in the pan. It's called blooming the spice. See how it's going to toast it a little bit before it gets too much liquid in there. And that just brings out the flavor of the spicing. Then I'm going to put the saffron in. Oh, the smell of this is just incredible. I've used saffron a lot, but this is saffron I actually bought in Marrakesh, and it's the most incredible saffron I've ever used. The aroma of it is just incredible, intense. So now I'm going to put the lamb back in. This is going to really fill this tagine. And my stock is now reduced, and I'm just going to grab, like a ladle full of it. I'm just going to sort of rub it around to deglaze what's crusted there on the bottom from cooking the onions and the spices. Just needs its little hat of parsley and cilantro. So I'm going to just put that on top. This is going to reduce down to nothing, basically, and it liquefies. It essentially creates parsley and cilantro steam, and then that steam is cycled back into the stew. There's a chef that told me that if you smell the dish in the kitchen, that's flavor that's not in the dish. So think about that. So now we're going to add the artichokes, preserved lemon, cannellini beans, and olives. And preserved lemons are just lemons that have been heavily salted and squeezed into a jar so that they're immersed in their own juice. And then you basically leave them for 2 months, and then you can use them. And like you see here, you don't use the pulp, you just use the rind. So I'm just scraping the pulp off the rind, and then I'm going to cut up the rind. The tagine I'm making here is one that I had with a family in Fez in Morocco, and I'm cooking from that food memory, trying to reprise it. The artichokes, I quartered them, which I think kind of makes them bite-sized. There's a lot of stuff here to try to fit into the tagine, so we'll see how it goes. But now, the great reveal, right? So I'm going to take these herbs out. So here's the lemon, the artichoke, the olives. Kind of stir this up a little. This is just a can of beans, cannellini beans, and I'm just taking them out of their liquid with a slotted spoon. And then this will all cook for another half hour. If you put this stuff in at the beginning, it just overcooks it. So I'm just going to try to gently stir this, mix it up a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to serve this on a bed of couscous, which I just made. This will soak up the juices. It's really good. And voila. Then I'll just top it with a little bit of chopped fresh cilantro, and that will be friggin' awesome. So it's the next day, and I'm without my video camera woman, so this is my first ever video selfie, so be prepared. I had the lamb tagine last night, then I had it again for lunch today, and I have to say it was even better the second day. So don't worry about leftovers. Doubt you'll have any, but It's awesome, fork tender. The lamb is infused with the flavors of all the ingredients it's cooked with. Just an awesome dish, so really cook it. If you need a recipe, there's one on wherewoolnewlondon.com, wherewoolnewlondon, all one word.com. That's the website, obviously, for Where Wool New London. Then there's also on that same website a link to join next week a virtual lunch. I'm having lunch with 4 friends of mine from around the country, each of whom has agreed to cook the lamb tagine. I know at least some of them will go off in crazy directions, so that'll be fun. And we're going to talk about our experiences cooking the tagine, about Moroccan food, about Morocco, and about cooking with local ingredients. So join us, be part of that. On the topic of cooking with local ingredients, it's not only the way to eat the healthiest, most flavorful food you possibly can, it also supports your local place. Those farms, the one-of-a-kind shops that you buy these ingredients from are what make a place what it is. So I really hope you do that. Come back in 2 weeks and we're going to have another cooking demo. This one will be a Greek-style roast leg of lamb, part 1, and then part 2 is taking the leftover leg of lamb and its gravy and making a simple lamb curry. Then topping it with 10 or 12 different toppings. Really fun. It's like a lamb curry sundae. Now, believe it or not, this was the Christmas and Easter holiday meal of choice for my family growing up. We'd have the leg of lamb the night before and then the curried lamb with the toppings for brunch the next day. So that's fun. I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you. So, get cooking from the lamb stand. Have a great next week. See you in a week.